I sat in the corner booth of the Marriott Marquis in downtown Atlanta at 19:15 on a Thursday. The hotel's lobby fountain murmured behind the glass wall, water sliding in perfect sheets. My wife of 23 years, Ellen, slid a white plastic key card across the polished walnut table. Room 1422. My name was nowhere on the reservation. She kept her voice low, the same measured tone she once used to read bedtime stories to our daughter. One night with David. Then we stay married. That's the deal. I turned the card over in my fingers. The magnetic strip caught the recessed ceiling light like a thin blade. I did not raise my voice. I did not push back from the table. I simply studied her the way I study a load manifest before the driver pulls out. Every line checked, every weight balanced, every strap in place. Ellen believed this was leverage. She had miscalculated the man across from her. I build construction logistics for a living. 42 trucks leave my yard every dawn, carrying rebar, lumber, and concrete across Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. I track every mile, every gallon, every receipt, every signature. A single discrepancy can collapse an entire schedule. 3 months earlier, I had noticed the first discrepancy. A withdrawal from our joint savings at SunTrust, labeled Medical Conference, Nashville. Ellen had never mentioned Nashville. Not once. I run the company from an office on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard in Norcross. The warehouse roll-up doors open at 5:30. Forklifts hum between the racks. The smell of diesel and fresh pine lingers in the air. That evening, I drove home to our brick ranch in Roswell. The garage smelled of sawdust and motor oil from the table saw I still use on weekends. I opened the steel safe bolted behind the tool bench. Inside lay the brown leather ledger I have kept by hand since the company was one pickup truck and a rented trailer. I turned to the page for joint savings. Ellen's signature was there, neat and familiar. The bank stamp was crisp. I photographed the slip with my phone, the flash reflecting off the brass hinges. David was her college boyfriend. They had met in a poetry lecture at Kennesaw State. He drove a red Mustang and quoted Kerouac between classes. After graduation, he started Marietta Drywall Solutions, LLC. The business limped along on kitchen remodels until I began subcontracting warehouse fit-outs to him. His crews were fast but careless. I still had the defective sheetrock from the Kennesaw warehouse stacked behind the lumber yard, piles of warped 5/8-inch fire code, waiting for the insurance adjuster. The pallets were wrapped in blue plastic, stamped with the supplier's logo from Dalton. His company owed my firm for materials and labor on 3 projects: a Publix supermarket in Alpharetta, a Home Depot distribution center in McDonough, and the Kennesaw warehouse retrofit. The invoices sat unpaid in my accounts receivable drawer, edges curling. I placed the Marriott key card in the ledger next to the withdrawal slip. The plastic edge pressed against the paper like a bookmark. The pieces were small, but they fit together the way tongue-and-groove lumber locks into place. The next morning I called my accountant, Marcus Reed, from the warehouse phone at 8:05. Marcus had been with me since the first tax return. Pull every personal account statement for the last 12 months, I told him. Flag anything that doesn't belong. Marcus arrived at 9:30 with a banker's box riding shotgun in his Ford F-150. He set it on the conference table between the coffee rings and the stack of load tickets. Inside were printed statements from SunTrust and a second account at Wells Fargo I had never authorized. Each transfer was labeled gift or loan repayment. The totals climbed steadily, like a slow leak in a hydraulic line. I leaned back in the rolling chair. The warehouse noise outside was steady, beeping forklifts, the low rumble of idling diesels. I felt the same calm I feel when a 40-foot flatbed is loaded to the exact legal limit, every strap tight, every corner blocked. Ellen's phone records would come next. I already had the contact for my attorney, Charles Langford, in Savannah. Charles had drafted every partnership agreement since the company incorporated in 2003. David thought he was getting one night in a downtown hotel room. He was about to learn what 23 years of patience looks like when it finally ends. I left the key card on the table where she had placed it. I stood, buttoned the navy sport coat I wear to client meetings, and walked out past the lobby fountain. The water fell in measured sheets, steady and unhurried. I did not look back. I drove north on Georgia 400 with the windows cracked just enough for the evening air to slide in. The scent of wet pine drifted from the Chattahoochee River bottoms. My phone rested silent in the center console. Ellen did not call. She knew the sound of my engine too well to try. The porch light at the Roswell house clicked on at 19:30, right on the timer. I entered through the garage, boots quiet on the epoxy floor. The ledger waited inside the steel safe behind the tool bench. I opened it under the LED shop light. The keycard photograph went in next to the withdrawal slip. The plastic edge left a faint crease on the heavy paper, like a scar that would not fade. Marcus arrived the next morning at 7:45 in his silver Ford F-150. He carried 2 stainless travel mugs from the Dunkin' on Mansell Road and the banker's box riding shotgun. We spread the statements across the kitchen island between the salt cellar and the wooden cutting board Ellen still used for Sunday roasts. SunTrust pages first, then the Wells Fargo stack. The transfers climbed like a slow, deliberate ladder, each rung higher, each memo shorter. I traced the lines with a yellow highlighter from the office drawer. Gift, loan repayment, conference expense. The words settled into a rhythm I could almost hear, the way a driver hears the click of a faulty turn signal miles before the bulb burns out. Ellen had treated the joint account like a contractor treats a credit line. Quiet, steady, certain the balance would hold until the job was done. Marcus opened his Dell laptop on the island. He logged into the Wells Fargo portal with the credentials I had never seen. The screen refreshed. The most recent deposit was a mobile check. The image loaded in segments. Ellen's handwriting filled the payee line. My forged signature sat beneath it, the loop of the Y too tight, the slant of the S too steep. Payee, Marietta Drywall Solutions, LLC. I felt the same pressure behind my eyes I feel when a trailer axle shears on I-75, sudden, heavy, but still within the margin I have planned for. I poured coffee into the stoneware mug my mother gave us the year Claire started kindergarten. The steam curled between us like a question neither of us asked. Charles Langford called at 9:12 from his office overlooking the Savannah River. Fulton County Superior Court signed the order at 8:47. AT&T will release the itemized logs by 1400 hours. His voice carried the same calm he used when we closed the land deal for the Norcross yard in 2011. I thanked him. I hung up. I opened the ledger again and wrote the date in the margin with a black Pilot G2 pen. Laura Chin arrived at 13:57 in a navy pantsuit and low heels that clicked once on the warehouse concrete. She carried a MacBook in a black neoprene sleeve and a court-stamped envelope. We sat at the conference table between the coffee rings and the stack of load tickets waiting for Monday dispatch. The air smelled of diesel, copier toner, and the faint citrus of the hand cleaner by the sink. She plugged in a SanDisk USB drive. The PDF opened with a soft chime. Page after page of calls. Texts. Timestamps. David's number appeared like a watermark across 6 months of evenings. The final thread loaded last. Ellen at 2:04. Room paid cash. Bring the check. David at 2:06. I'll sign the new invoice so your husband pays me Friday. The words sat on the screen, plain as the warning label on a pallet jack. I read the exchange twice. The warehouse noise faded to a low hum. Laura printed the thread on the HP LaserJet in the corner. The pages slid out warm. I initialed each one in the lower right corner with the same pen. At 16:30, I drove to the Wells Fargo branch on Holcomb Bridge Road. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and new carpet. Branch manager Carla Ortiz met me in her glass office. I laid the forged check on the blotter between us. She adjusted her glasses, typed, and the joint accounts locked with a soft click on her keyboard. Available balance. Enough for a tank of gas and a cup of coffee. I stopped at the Publix next door. I bought a prepaid Verizon flip phone in the electronics aisle, the kind with physical buttons and no camera. I activated it in the parking lot under the buzzing sodium lights. The screen glowed green. I texted Charles from the new number. Serve her Monday, 8 o'clock. Saturday I spent in the warehouse. Ramon Gutierrez ran the weekend shift with the steady hand he had shown since he started as a night loader in 2008. I walked the lumber racks under the high bay lights. The defective sheetrock from the Kennesaw job stood wrapped in blue plastic, pallets leaning slightly where the forks had set them down too hard. I ran my hand over the warped edges. The supplier's sticker from the mill in Dalton was still legible beneath the dust. Sunday evening, I fired up the big green egg on the back deck. The coals glowed orange through the vents. I seasoned a porterhouse with coarse salt and cracked pepper. Ellen set the table with the good plates, The ones we bought on our 10th anniversary in Charleston. We ate in silence, broken only by the clink of silver on china. She asked about the key card. I told her tomorrow would bring answers she had earned. Monday at 8:03 the doorbell rang. Harold Pike stood on the porch in a Navy windbreaker, retired Gwinnett County deputy badge still polished on his belt. He handed Ellen the manila envelope. She took it with both hands. The robe slipped from her shoulder. She did not notice. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck the quarter hour with the same chime it had kept since my mother carried it across 3 states. Ellen looked up from the envelope. Her eyes searched mine across the marble foyer. I met them without blinking, arms folded, boots planted on the rug we bought in Savannah the year Claire learned to walk. You wanted one night, I said. You just bought 23 years of consequences. I stood in the foyer while Ellen tore open the manila envelope. The pages slid into her hands like a hand of cards dealt from a deck she had never seen. Complaint for divorce. Temporary restraining order. Forensic report. Phone logs. Forged check. She read the headings aloud, voice thin, the way a foreman reads a stop work order on a job he thought was solid. I did not move. The grandfather clock kept its steady rhythm in the hallway. Outside, the sprinkler system clicked on, watering the zoysia lawn we had laid one spring when Claire was still in high school. Harold Pike touched the brim of his cap and left. The front door closed with the soft seal of weather stripping. Ellen looked up. We can still fix this, she said. I shook my head once. Fixing was for cracked concrete, not for trust that had been chipped away one secret at a time. Charles arrived with Laura Chen. We met in the study where the roll-top desk still held the gold cufflinks from my father. Charles laid a second envelope on the green felt blotter. Asset schedule, he said. Everything frozen until the hearing. Laura opened her MacBook. She pulled up the Wells Fargo portal again. The locked accounts showed no activity since the branch manager's keystrokes. She clicked to the business checking. Marietta Drywall Solutions had attempted transfers overnight. Each declined. David's name sat on every line like a signature on a bad check. I opened the ledger. I turned to a fresh page. I wrote the date in the margin with the same black pen I use for load tickets. Charles watched. You still keep paper, he said. I nodded. Paper does not delete itself. I drove to the warehouse. Ramon met me at the roll-up door. Kennesaw Inspector is here, he said. I walked the lumber racks under the high bay lights. The insurance adjuster stood beside the defective pallets. He ran a tape measure along the warped edges. Manufacturer defect, he said. Full replacement value. I handed him the original bill of lading. David's crew had signed for every sheet. The adjuster photographed the signatures. He stamped the claim approved. The mill in Dalton would cut a check to my company soon. Back in the office, I called the 3 project owners. The supermarket in Alpharetta. The distribution center in McDonough. The warehouse developer in Kennesaw. I told each superintendent the drywall subcontractor had been terminated for cause. I offered my own crews to finish the punch lists at cost. All 3 accepted before the coffee cooled. The Fulton County Sheriff's deputy served David at his Marietta office. The registered agent signed the receipt. The complaint mirrored Ellen's: fraud, conversion, breach of contract. The deputy taped the summons to the glass door when no one answered the bell. I ate lunch at my desk, a turkey sandwich from the Publix deli, no mayo, on wheat. The warehouse hummed around me. Forklifts beeped in reverse. I opened the ledger again. I added the insurance claim. I added the new finished contracts. The columns balanced the way a well-loaded trailer sits level on the scales. Claire called from the Georgia Tech library. She had heard nothing yet. I kept my voice level. Come home Friday after your exam, I said. We'll talk then. She agreed. The line went quiet for a moment. I love you, Dad. I told her the same. Ellen texted from the guest room. Can we meet tomorrow? I replied with one word, attorney. The message showed delivered. No dots appeared. I grilled salmon on the big green egg. The cedar plank smoked gently under the stars. I ate alone on the deck. The sprinklers had shut off. The zoysia smelled clean and sharp. I opened the ledger on the patio table. I wrote a single line. Day 1 of separation. The next morning, Charles filed the motion for emergency hearing. Judge Rollins set it for Friday. I signed the affidavit in the warehouse conference room. Laura notarized it with her Georgia seal. The ink dried black and final. David's bank called. The branch manager in Marietta confirmed the sheriff's levy. Every business account was frozen. The payroll checks for his remaining crew would bounce by afternoon. I listened. I did not interrupt. The Dalton Mill wired the insurance proceeds. The deposit hit my operating account. I transferred the exact amount of David's unpaid invoices to a new escrow subaccount. Charles would hold the funds until the hearing. I drove home. The house was quiet. Ellen's Lexus was gone. A note on the kitchen island read, "Staying with Mother." I placed it in the ledger between the phone logs and the forged check. I met the supermarket superintendent on site in Alpharetta. My crew had already stripped the defective walls. New sheetrock hung straight and true. The superintendent signed the change order. I countersigned. The job would finish ahead of schedule. Friday, I stood outside courtroom 3B in the Fulton County Courthouse. Charles adjusted his tie. Laura carried the banker's box. Ellen arrived with her attorney, a young partner from a Buckhead firm. She wore the navy blazer from our first seminar in Charlotte. She did not look at me. Judge Rollins took the bench. Charles presented the evidence in order: ledger, statements, logs, forged check, insurance claim, sheriff's returns. Ellen's attorney objected twice. The judge overruled both times. The gavel fell. Temporary orders issued. Ellen received the Lexus and personal effects. I retained the house, the business, the frozen accounts. David's company was enjoined from further billing. The escrow would pay legitimate subcontractors only. I walked out into the plaza. The November sun was low and sharp. Charles shook my hand. "Discovery starts Monday," he said. I nodded. The ledger was in my briefcase, heavier now, but still balanced. I left the courthouse at 11:15. The plaza bricks warmed under the low November sun. Charles walked beside me to the parking deck. He carried the banker's box. I carried the ledger in the leather briefcase I have used since 2003. We stopped at my Silverado. "Discovery begins Monday," he said. "They'll want depositions." I nodded. Depositions were load inspections, every strap examined. I drove north on I-85. Traffic moved steady. I rolled the window down. Diesel and fallen leaves filled the cab. My phone stayed quiet. Claire would finish lab at 1600 hours. At the warehouse, Ramon met me. Alpharetta superintendent called. "Your crew finished the punch list this morning." I opened the ledger on the desk. I wrote the completion line. The job closed clean. Laura Chin arrived at 13:30 with a fresh USB drive. She loaded David's tax returns, credit report, lien search. His company carried 3 prior judgments. The total exceeded his equipment value. I printed the lien report, stapled it behind the insurance claim. The stack grew, but the balance held. The escrow attorney called from Savannah. The Dalton Mill check had cleared. Funds sat ring-fenced. Charles drafted release language for David's honest crew chiefs. They would be paid. David would not. I walked the lumber yard. The defective pallets were gone. Tomas had loaded them for return. The concrete was swept clean. Ellen's attorney emailed at 15:20. Settlement offer attached. She wanted the house, half the business, clean record. Charles forwarded it. "We counter Monday." I deleted the message. I drove to Georgia Tech at 16:45. Claire waited outside the engineering building in her yellow hard hat. She climbed in. "Mom texted me." I started the engine. "We'll talk at home." We ate at the kitchen island. Leftover salmon, fresh bread, sweet tea. I told her everything. The key card, transfers, forged check, courthouse. She listened. When I finished, she hugged me. Her hard hat sat on the counter. At 1900 hours, I opened the safe, removed the gold cufflinks, placed them in a velvet box for Claire. Some things outlast betrayal. Charles called at 20:30. "David wants a meeting tomorrow." I set it for 9 o'clock at the warehouse. Neutral ground. Concrete floors. I grilled chicken on the big green egg. Coals glowed steady. Claire studied at the patio table. I wrote in the ledger, "David requests meeting." Saturday, David arrived at 8:55 in a wrinkled sport coat, manila folder in hand. His attorney followed. We sat at the conference table. Warehouse hummed beyond the glass. David pushed the folder forward. "Settlement." I walk. "You drop fraud claims." I opened it. Blank pages. I slid it back. Charles laid our counter. Full repayment. Forfeiture of invoices. Personal guarantee on defective materials. David paled. His attorney whispered. David shook his head. I stood. Monday, 1700 hours. I walked them to the door. Sunlight cut across the concrete. David did not look back. Claire left for the library at 10:30. I reconciled the escrow. Paid David's honest crew chiefs. Checks cleared by 1400 hours. Word spread. 3 more called. I paid them. Ellen's Lexus returned at 16:15. 1 suitcase. She left a note under the wiper. I'll sign whatever you need. I placed it in the ledger. Sunday, I attended early service at Roswell United Methodist. Sanctuary smelled of oak and coffee. Pastor spoke on restitution. I took no notes. Monday, 1700 hours passed. No response. Charles filed for default. Judge Rollins signed Tuesday morning. The ledger closed. Balance final. The default judgment landed on Wednesday. Charles called from the courthouse steps. Judge Rollins signed the final order. Full restitution. David's company dissolves. Ellen signs the quit claim on the house today. I listened. The warehouse hummed around me. I thanked him. I hung up. I opened the ledger. I turned to the last page. I wrote the date in the margin. The ink dried clean. The Cobb County Sheriff arrived at David's Marietta office. 2 deputies. 1 auction notice taped to the glass door. The rollback truck waited at the curb. They loaded the drywall saws, the lift, the rusted Ford van with the peeling logo. David stood on the sidewalk in a wrinkled shirt. He did not speak. The auction posted online. Commercial equipment. Bulk lot. Starting bid set at the exact amount of the unpaid invoices. The Dalton Mill checks sat in escrow. The legitimate crew chiefs had already cashed theirs. David's name was not on any envelope. Ellen arrived at the warehouse. She wore the navy blazer from Charlotte. She carried a manila folder. Charles met her in the conference room. I stayed at my desk. The quitclaim deed slid across the table. She signed in black ink. Her hand did not shake. Charles notarized it. The house was mine alone. She left without a word. The Lexus backed out of the gravel lot. Dust settled behind the tires. The bank released the frozen joint accounts. The balance transferred to a new operating account in my name only. The SunTrust branch manager called to confirm. I told her to close the old one. The line went quiet. She understood. Claire came home. She carried her hard hat and a duffel of laundry. We sat on the deck. The big green egg was cold. I told her the judgment was final. She nodded. She opened the velvet box. The gold cufflinks caught the light. She closed the lid. She hugged me. The auction closed. My company bought the lot for the invoice amount. The rollback delivered the equipment to the warehouse. Ramon directed the unload. The drywall saws went to the back bay. The lift would pull double shifts on the Alpharetta job. Nothing was wasted. David's remaining crew chiefs called. They asked for work. I hired 3. They started Monday. Their first paychecks would clear from the new account. Ellen's mother called. She asked if Ellen could keep the good plates. I told her to come Saturday. She arrived with a cardboard box. I carried the plates to her Buick. The china clinked softly. She did not meet my eyes. The final escrow wire hit. The Dalton Mill paid the defective materials claim in full. I transferred the balance to the business expansion line. The McDonough Distribution Center had already asked for a bid on the next phase. My crew would start soon. I grilled ribeyes on the big green egg. Claire set the patio table. We ate under the string lights. The Zoysia smelled clean. The ledger lay closed on the rail. I did not open it. The numbers were settled. Saturday the house was quiet. I mowed the lawn with the John Deere. The stripes were straight. I pressure washed the deck. The cedar planks gleamed. Claire studied in the study. The grandfather clock chimed the hour. Sunday I attended service at Roswell United Methodist. The sanctuary smelled of oak and coffee. The pastor spoke on restoration. I took no notes. The message was already lived. David's van sat on blocks in an impound lot off Windy Hill Road. The tires were gone. The logo peeled in the sun. No one claimed it. Ellen moved into a 1-bedroom in Alpharetta. The lease was in her name. The Lexus stayed in the parking space. She started a job at the Historical Society. The pay was modest. The hours were steady. The warehouse ran smoother than ever. Ramon promoted Tomas to lead dispatcher. The new crew chiefs hung sheetrock straight and true. The Alpharetta superintendent sent a thank you card. I pinned it above the time clock. Claire graduated in May. She wore the gold cufflinks on her blazer. She accepted a position with my firm. Her first project, the McDonough expansion. She drew the load plans herself. I closed the ledger for the last time. The final entry read, balance restored. I placed it in the safe. The brass hinges clicked shut. I stood on the deck at dusk. The string lights glowed soft amber above the patio table. The big green egg had cooled. Only a faint trace of hickory lingered in the air. Claire sat across from me, tracing the grain of the cedar plank with one finger. She had closed the velvet box. The cufflinks were safe inside. I opened the ledger one final time. The pages were thick now, every receipt, every signature, every court stamp in order. The final entry was simple, balance restored. I closed the cover. The leather felt warm from the day's sun. I carried it inside and placed it in the safe. The brass hinges clicked shut with the quiet finality of a trailer gate latching after the last strap is cinched. Claire followed me into the study. She set her hard hat on the roll-top desk beside the framed photo of the three of us. Ellen, Claire, and me, standing in front of the first flatbed the year the company turned profitable. Claire's hair was in pigtails. Ellen's smile was wide. I left the photo where it was. Some things belong to memory, not judgment. The warehouse ran like a well-tuned engine. Ramon had the dispatch board color-coded by route. Tomas kept the forklifts on a preventive maintenance schedule that never missed a beat. The new crew chiefs from David's old company hung sheetrock with the precision of men who knew the cost of cutting corners. The Alpharetta superintendent sent a second thank you card. I pinned it beside the first. David's name no longer appeared on any invoice. His van rusted in the impound lot off Windy Hill Road. The auction had stripped him of tools, credit, and reputation. He took a job driving a box truck for a pool supply company in Ackworth. The pay was hourly. The hours were long. He kept his head down. Ellen settled into the one-bedroom in Alpharetta. The Historical Society gave her a desk near the window that overlooked the town square. She cataloged old ledgers. Ironic work, but steady. The Lexus stayed in its assigned space. She walked to the grocery store on Saturdays. The good plate sat in her mother's Buick for one trip, then in a cardboard box on a shelf she rarely opened. Claire graduated in May. She walked across the stage at McCamish Pavilion in a navy gown. The gold cufflinks glinted at her sleeves. She accepted the diploma with the same steady grip she used to secure a load chain. That summer she redrew the McDonough expansion plans on the warehouse drafting table. Her lines were clean. The superintendent approved them without a single revision. I kept the house in Roswell. The zoysia stayed green. The grandfather clock chimed the hours with the same oak steady voice it had kept since my mother carried it across 3 states. I pressure-washed the deck every spring. The cedar planks gleamed like new. Sunday mornings I still attended Roswell United Methodist. The sanctuary smelled of polished oak and fresh coffee. The pastor spoke on restoration, on building again after the storm. I no longer took notes. The lesson was written in the life I lived, one load at a time, one strap at a time, one honest day after another. Justice is not vengeance. It is the quiet moment when the scales settle and every weight is exactly where it belongs. I learned that the night Ellen slid the key card across the table. I proved it the day the ledger closed. A man builds his life the way he builds a load. Deliberate, balanced, every piece accounted for. When betrayal tries to shift the weight, you do not flinch. You tighten the straps, check the manifest, and drive the route you planned from the start. The warehouse lights stay on until the last truck is parked. The house lights dim when Claire turns in for the night. The safe stays locked. The ledger rests inside, complete, balanced, final. If you enjoyed this story, hit that thumbs up and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Not subscribed yet? Smash the subscribe button and ring the bell to catch the next one. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next story.